Good to
Okay,
go.
thanks, Al. So, as I said, we'll be recording the presentation, so I have to share that information with you in case anybody talks. But at the end of the day, we'll share everything with you as soon as we can, probably within the next day or two, the longest. Um, but first things first, congratulations. This is our first full get together with all of our FY24 round one grantees. It's a exciting. We have some familiar faces. I've seen some of you in the past, and then we have some new faces, and it's always exciting to have the new faces join. Um, we create a directory of all of our grantees, so obviously, if anybody's interested in reaching out to any of the additional grantees, having any conversations or discussions about things that you might be struggling with, please let us know. We could always try to facilitate any of those connections. But ultimately, this FY24 Round 1 Gains Grant Program, we funded 13 applications. We received 38. Um, obviously less than around a third of our grantees of our applications were recipients. We did fund the full 5 million, so we ended up actually having three applications who passed that weren't able to be funded, which is a first for me since being here in the Office of Apprenticeship. We usually have additional funding left over at the end, so that's a good sign. That means things are really kind of turning here for the better when it comes to registered apprenticeship specifically in New Jersey. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that that all has a lot to do with the hard work that all of you do within your grants and the expansion of the understanding by employers, especially of the registered apprenticeship model and how it can be beneficial to their success moving forward. And I think that that is key to this being a real change in philosophy when it comes to the way we train individuals, because I think that in the past here at the Department of Labor, we've been big on individual training accounts and one to one connections to training, and that training doesn't necessarily always lead to employment. And I think that programs like Gaines, where every participant is being trained but also has a job simultaneously, that is really the model that is most successful. And I'll be honest with you, since this administration has come into office, we have definitely been the premier area of the building when it comes to this program. Everybody wants to have a program like Gaines within the Department of Labor. So um, that's exciting, and that's something that I think, like I said, is directly related to the hard work that all of you do. So once again, congratulations on the receipt of this grant, and we'll get started here now so that we can kind of go over some of the details of what the grant requirements are. But then we'll really concentrate the majority of our time on your monthly activity and expenditure reports, so that you can see the process. Uh, I'll go through the user guides with you. We'll provide those user guides to you after the meeting, so that when March 1st comes around and you're ready to start your first month's report, you'll have some understanding of what's expected of you, and you're not just willy-nilly trying to figure it out on the fly, hopefully. But just know we have staff here to help, so we'll go over that as well. So first things first. My name is Bill Sarbuck. I am the supervisor here in the Office of Apprenticeship, soon to be called the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Um, we are expanding to some additional training type programs, so that'll be interesting and exciting to see. But um, currently within our office, we have the Gains program. We have a PACE program, which is a pre-apprenticeship program. We have a youth transitions program, which is pre-apprenticeship as well. Um, we also have some NJ Build programs that will soon no longer be reporting with through our unit, but still a part of the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. They're working on creating a unit for itself. NJ Build separating from us to kind of concentrate more heavily on the law itself. Um, but currently, we still have those programs, and that's the Women and Minority in Construction Grant and our Women and Minority Veterans in Construction Grant. Um, we also have some old grants and what we call a New Jersey Place, which is a program where we're working to get apprentices college credits and work towards a college degree. That hasn't been funded additionally since FY21 because that grant's still active. The two grantees that received the funding in FY21 are still working towards completion of those grants. So we have not funded it again since then, but those programs do exist. So that's everything here under our office. We are all here report to Assistant Director James Manning, who a lot of you have worked with and spoken to in the past. He's been involved in apprenticeship for over 20 years here at the Department of Labor. Um, and he's always a good piece to what's going on and how we expand on things here at the department. And then I have some of my colleagues here, Lauren Kremper DiFilippo, who is oversees some of our grants specific to the NJ build, and then also our pre-apprenticeship grant, and then Al Nixon, who I'll introduce to you guys in a little while. Um, and then we have Tammy Novatin, who's currently out on maternity leave, but she's a part of our team. And some of you have worked very closely with Tammy in the past. We're hoping for her to be back here shortly, sometime in the middle of April, I think, is when we expect her to be back. So that'll be an added boost to what we can get accomplished here and the assistance we can provide to all of you. So, as I said, 13 grantees, many different occupations. I think one of the easiest and most misunderstood thing about registered apprenticeship is that it's not all in the trades. The trades are a big part of registered apprenticeship nationally, and when you look at the big picture of registered apprenticeship in New Jersey, it's still most of the top 20 fall into the trades, but with gains and with the funding that we've been able to provide through gains over the last few years, we've seen an expansion to many, many different occupations and industries. Healthcare, especially, we have a lot of healthcare here with us on the call today. As you can see on the occupations list, it was somewhere in the range of about 40% of the grantees, and of those that they're serving, when you look at the number of apprentices to be placed, it was somewhere in the range of about 80% of the placements were going to be in healthcare. So that's exciting. We have also expanded this year to concentrating on the K through 12 teacher area, and I think that that is exciting to see where and how successful we can be in those areas, because there is a teacher shortage nationally and in New Jersey especially. And I think that if we can come up with a strategy, and these strategies can be successful, to enhance the ability for our state to increase the number of teachers we have through different means, not just the college process, that'll be exciting. So this slide really just depicts who received our grants and what occupations, and then how many participants they're going to be serving with those funds. So, as part of the NGO, when you read through it, we asked you to make sure that you provided proof that you would make sure that all of your participants were registered with the One Stop. All participants are registered with the One Stop through our JobSource website. If you go to the jobsource.nj.gov web address, the participants can do this themselves. You can have them do it right in your office, or they can do it on their own. You just want them to make sure, you want to make sure they show you proof that they've done it. But ultimately, they click to create a free account, and this will give them the ability to register with the one-stop system. This will ensure that they're registered for the purposes of, if there's a need for any additional resources or services that are above and beyond what you can provide them within your grant, that they receive that. It'll also ensure that they are made aware of the different types of things that we assist here at the Department of Labor on, and that is a key to us as far as ensuring that we're meeting the needs of our participants. So you'll see the tools here has a lot. There's a lot of information here that can be utilized by participants. Anything from helping them write a resume to proper ways of doing a work search. So, this stuff can all be useful and helpful to participants in some way, shape, or form. As I said earlier, I was going to introduce Al Nixon, who is the tech who oversees specifically the Gaines grant. Al will be the one who's reaching out to you monthly, reviewing your monthly activity and expenditure reports. For those of you who have been a part of our Gaines grant more recently here, you've worked with Al already. He's very familiar with you. You're very familiar with him. Um, Al, if there's anything you'd like to add, say, please feel free to unmute yourself and go
Just
ahead.
just hello, everybody.
That-
Basically, that's it.
all right, good. So Al's been with us since June. I think either late June, early July, one of those two. It's gone fast, let's put it that way. And he's picked up a lot of what we lost when Tammy went out on maternity leave. Um, as I said, Tammy will be back here in mid-April, but Tammy was overseeing the gains grants and the activity and expenditure reports in the past. When she comes back, there may be some transitions, but I don't anticipate um, having Al not be included and involved in things at that point, just because he's already been working with a lot of you. So we'll get that all figured out once she's back here and gets her self-organized, because I'm sure it's going to take her a little bit when she gets back, but we'll be in touch once that time comes if there's anything that comes up. Joanne, you have your hand raised if you want to ask any questions. Please unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat and I can ask it when I get done with the presentation. So the contract period here that we are the contract period that we are um, have here with this 18-month grant program is February 1st of 2024 through July 31st of 2025. Like I said, it's an 18-month grant period. We'll have activity and expenditure reports that we're going to go over here in a short bit that are going to be due by the 15th of every month. Within the first 6 months of the contract start date, which so by between February 1st and July of 2024, the expectation is that if you haven't already gotten your programs approved through USDOL, that you will have them approved through USDOL during that time frame, and that you will have started your first class of apprentices. So you've added your apprentices and you've added your apprentices and they've started with their both on-the-job training and related technical instruction. Sorry, I saw we had somebody who said they couldn't hear. All right, so Al, is there a phone number they can call into? Uh,
Yeah, I'm getting it now to post in the chat.
okay. Sorry about that. By the end of the contract period, the expectation is that contracted that number of participants that you said you were going to provide service to within your deliverables of your application, and that'll be a part of your contract pages, that you'll have met that number and that you'll have placed that number into registered apprenticeship program. Um, just for clarity purposes, I know we had sent out to some of you instructions on how to complete your contracts, and then when I looked at them, there was some things wrong with them and I have them getting fixed. We're getting close. We're right now waiting on one additional thing to get corrected. So I'm hoping that sometime before the end of this week, I'll be able to send that back out to you guys and you can get those contract pages signed off on. Okay, so who can participate in your grant? New Jersey employers and New Jersey apprentices. So what that means is the employers that you're placing them with have to be New Jersey based, and the apprentices themselves have to have have to be New Jersey residents. We cannot place anybody that's outside of the state or with any employers that are outside of the state, mainly because these funds come from state taxes, and we're trying to ensure that they're utilized towards state resources. So hopefully that will not be of any hindrance to any of you, but please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Um, there really isn't much that we can do when it comes to changing the fact, but we can talk about it and try and help. Um, are there any other requirements for apprentices to participate in the grant? All apprentices must be registered with USDOL and issued an apprentice ID number. That's done when you put them into the Rapids database. That's the database that USDOL uses in order to capture data on your registered apprentices. That apprentice ID number is what we use to ensure that these participants are registered with USDOL. It is captured within your monthly activity report. Um, and you will have to have it on all your participants. All apprentices must be earning a minimum of $17 per hour. Specific wage requirements should follow USDOL guidelines for that occupation. So we set a minimum of $17. Obviously, some occupations are going to be higher than $17 an hour. It all depends on what it is you guys are doing as far as your training programs and the placements that are going to be occurring with those. All apprentices must be hired with your participating employer on a full-time basis. The reason we say this is that there's a minimum requirement of 2,000 hours of on-the-job training a year with USDOL. When you do the math, that works out to a little over 38 hours a week. So ultimately equates to full-time employment. Sometimes we have occupations where those things are a little bit hazy and we can have those conversations if we need to. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or talk to your USDOL representative. Sometimes it's also useful for us to maybe even be a part of those conversations with your USDOL representative, and we'd definitely be willing to be a part of those and help in any way to make sure we're all on the same page. So the requirements for OJT wage reimbursement, as you know, many of you have added OJT as a line item within your budget. Apprentices must be receiving a minimum wage of $17 an hour. Reimbursement can't exceed 40 hours a week for a 52-week period. So what that means is if anybody works more than 40 hours, we're only paying for the 40 hours of regular time, half of that salary, and it's only good for a 1 year period. Usually 1 year is way beyond how long the OJT is going to cover anyway, but it's just for reference purposes for you. Payroll records are required when requesting reimbursement, so you provide us with the copy of those payroll records within your miscellaneous attachments. I'll show you where that is in a little while. Those records should clearly show the apprentice's name, period of work, rate of pay, hours worked. These documents should be uploaded to the expenditure report for the applicable month. So if you're saying that Bill Sarbuck worked 40 hours this week, you should have, or 40 hours this month, um, you should have my pay stub uploaded with my contact with all the information that states here, and it should be easy for us to read and capture. Because for any of you who have large numbers of apprentices, I promise you this is a rather arduous process to review and check and verify. Um, I commend Al and Tammy when she was doing it for staying on top of it and being able to be organized enough to figure out all of this detail, especially for those of you who are going to have 50 to 100 apprentices at some point that could possibly all be receiving OJT at the same time, and that's done every month. So it's a lot of work. OJT reimbursement is only for regular pay. That's where I was going earlier. It doesn't cover any overtime, holiday, PTO, anything like that. If your pay stub doesn't say regular hours, number of hours, and how much you got paid an hour, that's what is covered on the pay stub. It's not covering any of the additional areas. On the job training really is specifically that we're paying for 50% of the wages for that training, not for that person's salary. It's not a subsidy, let's say, that we're providing. It's more of a training in cost payment that we're making. Details of the reimbursement request should be entered on the OJT chart within your activity report. We'll show you that in a little while and you'll get a better understanding of what I mean by that. The total reimbursement calculated should match the amount you bill for on the expenditure report. For prior grant recipients, apprentices funded in their through a prior gains grant or OJT contract are not eligible to participate as an apprentice in the new gains contract. So if you were a prior gains recipient, you can't train them in an apprenticeship program um, a second time. Okay. Ultimately, the expectation is we already paid for them in the first round, so the second time wouldn't be something that we'd be looking to cover. OJT reimbursement should not exceed the allocated cost per head in your budget. So if you said that you were going to allocate $2,000 per apprentice on your OJT line item, then you shouldn't go above that $2,000 per apprentice on your OJTs. That's should make sense. So this slide is only here because I'm going to switch over to another slideshow and show you guys the process for completing the monthly activity and expenditure reports.
While Bill's doing that, I just wanted to let everybody know too, when you do your upload of the pay stubs, if you're doing OJT, you can upload everything onto one document. You don't need to break it down per apprentice and have 1,000 different uploads. You could just scan it all at once and put it as a packet basically, and then submit it. It makes things probably easier on you as well as on our end.
Agreed. Yes. If you have 30 pages of uploads, because you have all those different apprentices, I promise you that is a lot of extra work on both sides of things. Scanning it and uploading it as one document is a very good time saver for you and us. So what we're going to go over now is the monthly gains activity and expenditure reports, how to access them, how to complete them, stuff like that. These are user guides. They will be provided to you after this presentation uh, so that you can use them for step-by-step completion of these monthly reports. I promise you, once you get started using them, they will get easier. Initially, it will take you a little bit of time. For those of you who've done this in the past, you could definitely um, attest to that, I'm sure as well. Maybe not you, Edna. Don't shake your head or anything at me. So our monthly activity and expenditure reports are part of the administration of your grant. All organizations are required to complete these reports. They're due by the 15th of every month, and that's for your prior month's expenses and your prior month's activity. So if you're opening a report and it's February, you know that you're opening January's report. If it's March, you should know you're opening February's report. You're always opening your prior month's report when you open a report to start one and complete one. Please think that way always. We have almost every month multiple grantees who accidentally open the wrong reports. I'm hoping to come up with a strategy that will make that a little easier for you guys and eliminate that as a problem. But for the time being, the easiest way to explain it is if when you go in there and you go to initiate a report, look at the date and say, okay, it is February 27th. I am opening a January report because of the month that I'm opening it. It should be that simple for you. Hopefully, it will stay that simple for you. But at the end of the day, that's the best solution I can give you right now. So, first step in completion of these reports is to go back to that lovely database that you probably all missed so much since putting in your applications called IGX and logging in. For those of you who have an issue because your username is or password isn't working, you could reach out to us. We can help you. But ultimately, you'll go to the njdol.intelligrants.com web address, enter the username and password that you created when you were completing your applications or when you registered with the database. If you need to register as a new user, when you get to that web address, right under that login button, there'll be a new user button. You click it. You can let us know, and we'll add you to the application. Once you're logged in, it'll bring you to your dashboard page. Your dashboard page is basically like a landing page for the system. You'll have a section called My Tasks, and at some point, once your contracts get signed by both you and us, your application will actually reside there under My Tasks. The next slide that I'm going to go over is going to show you how to find your application if your application isn't under My Tasks. I'll show you that in a second. But just so you know, I've also highlighted, circled here, and drawn an arrow, because when you log in, if you need to start a report, you don't really need to go into your application any longer. You can do it right from your dashboard by just clicking on the Initiate Related Documents tab at the top, and then you'll skip to the section after clicking Initiate Related Documents. I'll show you where those sections are within the spreadsheet, within this presentation, once we get to them. But if you need to get into your application, or you would rather get to your Initiate Related Documents through your application, you can click on the application here under My Tasks, or you can search for it by clicking on the Searches button at the top, clicking on My Documents, choosing Growing Apprenticeship Non-Traditional Sectors Application 2024, and clicking Search. When you do that, under Documents, your application will then show up there, okay? You can then click on the hyperlink under Name for your application. It'll bring you into your application. Um, this search is very simple. You can also use your recent documents, which will show you any documents that you've been in recently. Hopefully you've been in your Gains application recently, so then it'll show up right there. But if not, you can just use the My Documents and it'll show up in there every time. Once you've clicked on the appropriate application, it'll bring you into your document landing page within your application. A lot of you will recognize this because you remember filling the pages out and submitting all this wonderful information back when you were putting in your applications originally. Um, what you'll want to start with is your employer sponsor page within your application. A lot of you filled out information within your employer sponsor section, but you'll want to make sure that you go to it and double check it and make sure there isn't anything that needs to be updated. That could mean that you have a new employer or a new sponsor that you need to add to your list. So you'll go to that employer sponsor page, you'll add that information. There'll be a save button at the top. Once you save it, you notify us, and we will go in and verify that the person and that the organization doesn't have any liabilities to us. And as long as they don't, then they'll be fine for you to place and pay out OJT or RTI to. But that's ultimately the first step, is that once you log into your application, go to your employer sponsor page and complete the updating of your employer sponsor section of your application. If you need to update your employer sponsor page, you do have to go into your application. You can't just go to the dashboard page and click on that Initiate Related Documents at the top. You'll have to go in to your application and update the employer sponsor page. This is your employer sponsor page. Once you open it, you'll click the plus sign in the right hand corner. It'll create another tab for you to enter all the information on that employer. And once you do that, you'll save the page and let us know. We will go in and check and make sure that they don't have any liabilities to the state greater than $750. As long as they don't, then you're fine. We'll verify that they're good, and we'll move forward with your monthly billing and activity reports. But if we find an issue, we'll let you know, and you can reach out to that vendor and ask them to please get that issue taken care of so that we can recheck. And once we can recheck and verify that there's no longer a liability, that'll be when you can include them on your monthly reports. Until that liability is cleared, though, they won't be able to be included on your reports. Um, just know that this doesn't happen often, but it does happen on occasion, especially with larger organizations who, sometimes just fall behind on a payment for some reason. It isn't a big deal. It's just a requirement of the department in order for us to be able to pay out payments. So we will help you in any way to get that taken care of. Sometimes we're able to do it through receiving notification from Treasury or from our employer accounts department here at the Department of Labor that the liability has been taken care of, so that even if it's not showing up on the system that the liability is cleared, we can get that letter and we can override the issue with that letter. All right, what the, sorry, I just lost my screen. Okay. So once you've completed the updating the employer sponsor page, you'll scroll down to the very bottom in that blue um, toolbar, and you'll see a heading that says related documents. Underneath it, you'll see a tab that says initiate related doc. You'll click on initiate related documents, and what will pull up is this box. The top button, you don't need to enter anything. The top section, you don't need to enter anything. You don't need to change the parent document if you're in your application. It'll already show it. You'll choose the drop down for available documents, and you'll search for Gains activity report and the month that you're trying the report for. Okay, so obviously the first month's report that you're going to do is going to be for February 2024. So you'll search for Gains activity report February 2024, and you'll click the create button at the bottom. Once you click create, of course, we love to make sure that you're sure. So we'll ask you to agree that you are sure you want to initiate that report. And when you click agree, it will create the report and it'll bring you right into the report. Now, if for any reason you decided, okay, I know I initiated this report and it's here, but I don't have the time to fill it out right now, you can go out of it. You can log back in. It'll be under my tasks in your dashboard at all times. You'll be able to find it there um, until it's been submitted. So just know it won't disappear. You've already created it. It's there. Just make sure that if you've entered any data on any pages, you always click save. Anytime I say this, it brings me back to my horrible, scary days back in WordPerfect when I was in high school, where I used to get yelled at every day about save, save, save. And back then it was F12 that you had to hit for save. Luckily, we don't have to do that anymore. Now it's just click the save button. So please make sure you're clicking that save button as much as you can, and that you do it multiple times throughout doing things, because I would just hate for you to lose data that you've already done because you didn't get that save button. It is internet based, and the internet has a mind of its own, as we all know. At least my kids think so. They think it knows everything. So just know, please always click the save button as much as you can whenever you get a chance. So once you're into the actual document, you'll see that there are these tabs here on the left-hand side. These are the pages within your monthly activity report. Um, those forms that you have to complete, each one of them has a box next to it that's empty initially. When you've completed them, there'll be a check mark in them. The first page that you'll start with is the report type selection. In the report type selection, you'll you'll choose either interim or final. What this means is, no, this is not accurate. Either way, um, the only time you're going to choose the final is if it's your last month's report. So when you complete your July 2025 report, you'll choose final. Any other time you're going to choose interim. Once you've chosen that, you click the save button and this page is completed. It's really a simple task. It really is ultimately just allows us to know what your final report is. The next page that you need to complete is your participant list. This is where you're going to provide us the details of all of your participants. So you can break them down by employer. So if you're an intermediary and you have multiple employers, you can name it the employer, and you can list all of the employers underneath that employer. I mean, all the employees under that employer, all the registered apprentices under that employer. Um, and then you would click the add button in the top right hand corner to add additional pages so that you can create additional pages for additional employers. For those of you who are the employers, um, you can just you can put it by cycle. If you're doing these in cycles, you can put it, or you could just create one participant list and just keep adding names to it. You don't have to have a different participant list for every participant. Please don't do that. That ends up being very messy. Um, there's a plus sign next to the name and the information that you provide. You use that plus sign and it just creates another section for you to add a new name right underneath it. You can list a lot on one page, so don't worry too much about having to add pages unless you feel there's a need to separate your participants. If you don't feel there's a need to separate your participants, then don't keep them on a page until the system won't let you, and then create a new page if you need to create a new page. Most of you won't need to do that. Edna, you will, but most of you won't. At the end of the day, The information you're providing here is first name of apprentice, last name of apprentice, apprentice ID number, and whether they're OJT or RTI or both. What we'll do is check the USDOL verified box once we verify using that USDOL apprentice ID number that they're in Rapids. Okay, so we check that box. But once you've entered the information on all of your participants, you'll save this page and you've completed your participant list. When you come in the following month, all of your participants from the previous month will already be here. You don't have to re-enter them every month. They're there, they stay there. What happens is basically your March report will start with everything where everything ended on your February report, and then you just add to the report in March. Okay, and then so on and so forth. The next page you have to complete is called your monthly reporting. This is going to be where you provide us with details specific to what occurred in your previous month. Okay, so you'll see that first section that says total before this reporting month. That's going to be anything that you've reported prior to this. It'll aggregate the data there. And then in the current reporting month, you'll just add the number of registered apprenticeship programs that you've gotten approved through USDOL. So your first month, you're going to enter any that you've already gotten approved. If you don't have any approved, you'll leave it at 0. Um, if you get a new one approved, you'll add a 1 and you'll move on to the next tab. The next section is the total number of individuals placed into a registered apprenticeship occupation. So if you don't have any approved registered apprenticeship programs, you can't have any approved registered apprentices. Okay, so just know that you have to have a number in that top section in order for that bottom section to be able to be completed. Under occupation, that's where you're going to list your registered apprenticeship programs, what the status of those registered apprenticeship programs are with USDUL. So if it's completed, you'll choose completed. If it's in process, you'll choose in process, and so on and so forth. Um, and then you'll provide us with the date that the program was registered with USDOL. If you don't know it, you can go in Rapids and find it. It's right in Rapids. And then you can provide us with any comments that you feel are necessary for that occupation. If you have multiple occupations, you use the plus sign next to the occupation there, and it will just add another section for you to add the same information for your second occupation. You can list as many occupations as you need to there. This is one page for this report. We don't need multiples for this page ever. Then you'll answer questions 2, 3, and 4, which basically just provide us with updates on where things are and if you're having any barriers with both your with the development of your apprenticeship program or with any of your apprentices. That helps us to know whether or not we should reach out to you and assist in any way, or whether we should try and work with USDOL to get something moving, because sometimes they hold things up too. So, that adding that detail, please don't put NA in there every month. Provide us with a little bit of detail of where things are. It helps us to better understand what's going on. And it also helps us to not feel like we have to come bug you for additional information, because this is where we can get that information. So please provide as much as you can. Once you've completed all these sections, click save. I would suggest you click save multiple times through it, but it's up to you how you feel necessary and how comfortable you are with your internet never breaking down. So what you'll notice after you complete your monthly reporting and you get to your placements into registered apprenticeship occupations page, those pages are going to automatically be created based on who you entered on your participant list. So you're going to see so your participant list will have all the names, and you'll see a page for each participant under your placements into registered apprenticeship occupations. You click on the pages that need to be updated. Your initial month, obviously they're all going to need to be updated, but after your initial month, you'll only have to go in there probably on a monthly basis to either add additional information for any participant. So if anybody's pay rate was increased, if anybody had additional OJT or RTI hours that you were reporting, if they received a credential of some sort, stuff like that, that's what you would add in there. But that's only going to be done on a monthly basis when things occur. Most likely you'll just be going to these pages and updating the OJT and RTI hours on a monthly basis. But for your first month, you will have to go in and add additional information on each one of these participants when they first get added to your participant list. This is what the placement page looks like. I know it's very small on your screen. Don't pull out binoculars or anything, because you'll see it plenty when you get in there. The information is very generic. Nothing here should be overly confusing, but ultimately the top section is just kind of contact information, street address, stuff like that on your participants. Um, Second section is target population. It'll all automatically pull in their apprentice ID number from the participant page. Gender, race, ethnicity. This is so that we can track demographics on our participants. Date of birth, starting wage as an apprentice, and their start date in the apprenticeship program. This third section is the status of their apprenticeship right now with USDOL. Are they registered? Are they canceled? If they left the program for some reason, that's where you would enter that information. If they've completed the program, that's where you'd enter that information. Date the apprenticeship cancellation. So you would only enter a cancellation date if you've chosen canceled under status of apprentice. Date of apprenticeship completion. You would only enter a completion date if you've chosen completed under the status of the apprentice. Um, but most likely it'll say registered and you won't enter any dates in those two sections next to it. Status of the apprentice's performance to date. Most likely it'll say satisfactory on a monthly basis. If you have some issues with apprentice, then you can change it. Total number of OJT hours to date, and the total number of related technical instruction hours to date. This is the section I was saying you'll probably have to update monthly or at least on occasion throughout your grant period. We do check and balance this against what's in Rapids on occasion, so you want to keep this as up to date as possible. Um, but ultimately, those two sections should increase on a monthly basis as your participants move forward within the program. Sponsor information. So you are most likely going to be the sponsor because we pretty much only grant to sponsors. So you'll list yourself as the sponsor. It'll pull from your employer sponsor page within the application that I showed you earlier and said you had to update on a monthly basis if you had new ones. It'll pull in your FEIN number, street address, city, zip, all that information gets pulled in. We'll check the verified button if we've verified it in the system that they don't have a liability. NAICS code, you can look it up. There's a link there to look up the NAICS code if you don't know it for that industry, but ultimately you enter a NAICS code, choose the occupation from the drop down. If for some reason an occupation is not there, let us know. We can have it added. And the type of job placement. I believe that's like full-time, part-time, but I'm not sure exactly what that is. But you'll see there's not that many options there. You choose the option that fits the participant. If the employer and the sponsor are the same, then you would check that box. If you're the sponsor, but you are an intermediary and you have many employers that you place them with, you will enter the employer's information here. Once again, the drop down will pull from the employer sponsor page. You choose that employer and it'll pull in the rest of their information. We'll then verify at the end that that employer does not have any liabilities. Training milestones. You'll choose the drop down for milestones and enter any milestones that the participants receive. Provide the additional information. If there's multiple training milestones, you use the plus sign at the end and add the additional training milestones. Certification information. If they receive any certifications while they're in the program, you'll list them. Provide details on the number of hours and when they completed it, and you can add multiple certifications as well, so you'll use that plus sign if necessary. College credit information. If any of your participants receive college credit, you list the information on the college credit. You can list multiples for that as well, and that would be based on each participant. Once again, please make sure you're saving the page throughout and that you're updating the information on a monthly basis to the best of your ability, because that is how we track what's going on with your participants. It's also how we compare to what's in Rapids and make sure that it's accurate. So please make sure you're updating this page monthly. I know it seems like a lot, but once you get them entered for the first time, a lot of this is just going in and adding a number here and there. If any of you have OJT wage reimbursement within your budget, then you will complete this OJT apprenticeship wage reimbursement page. Um, this page is only completed if you are utilizing OJT funding from the grant. You don't have to include this page if you do not utilize OJT funding from the grant. So you begin by selecting the apprentice on the drop down under name of apprentice. The apprentices that are on your participant list will pull up. You'll choose their name. It'll pull in their USO DOL apprentice ID number and their occupation. You'll choose whether um, you're asking for funding for OJT or RTI. In this case, you'll choose that, and it'll tell us the cumulative number of hours. You'll enter the number of hours for the month, right, Al? Nope. This is um
You enter the cumulative, yes, and
so
then the box to the left of it keeps track of the total cumulative.
yeah, so you enter the current month's number of hours, and the cumulative number of hours will pull in based on what they had previous month. Um, then you'll enter their hourly wage. It has to be $17 or more an hour. Please disregard the fact that it says 16, actually. I just did this and see I missed it. See what happens. I updated it up here and not down here. Okay. So we reimburse at a pay rate of no lower than $17 an hour, and we reimburse 50% of that $17 an hour, or whatever that salary may be. So you'll enter the salary. It has to be more than $17 an hour or more. You'll enter the wages, and you'll provide us with the total funds requested for OJT. So it should be 50% of the wages. So if the wages say $340, the OJT would say $170. Okay, it should be 50% of the wages. Your match should be the other 50%. So if you have 170 here, you should have 170 in the match, and the source for cost sharing would be chosen, which most likely would be employer. And then you would choose the name of the employer. Um, and that would possibly be you if you are the employer and the sponsor. But if you're not the sponsor and the employer and you are an intermediary, then you'll choose the employer from the list. It'll pull up the list of employers that are on your employer sponsor page once again. Once you've completed entering this for the one person, you'll use the plus sign. It'll create another line, and you'll add the additional OJT information for the next participant. Once again, if you had people on the OJT wage reimbursement page last month, they will automatically populate here on this page. You don't have to add them again. You just have to add the new information for the month on this page. So initially, you'll be adding your apprentices for the first time when you first are requesting OJT. After that, then you'll just be updating their information on this page on a monthly basis. Please always make sure you're saving the page regularly. And once you've completed entering all this information, then you're good to go and you can move on to the next page. The next page is that miscellaneous attachments page. This is where you're going to provide the pay stubs for any OJT. As Al said, make one document, upload them here, enter into description pay stubs, select or drag the file into that drag files here section, and that will provide us with the information we need in order to confirm the pay stubs. You can also provide any other proof that you feel is necessary, but it's not mandatory that on a monthly basis you provide us with any additional stuff beyond the payroll records that we told you about for OJT. We may ask you on occasion to include other things, and this is where you would include it if we asked you for it. Once you've added a description and uploaded a document, once again, you still have to remember to save the page. If you need additional sections to upload, there is a plus sign at the bottom that you can choose, and it'll create another line. Once you've entered all of these pages, the last step that you'll have to complete for your activity report is that same document validation we told you to do on your applications when you were submitting. All that document validation does is it checks to make sure that there aren't any errors on the pages that you already started and completed. If there are, they'll show up here, and you'll just go back to each of those pages and update the information so that the errors go away. If nothing shows up here, then you don't need to do anything additional, and you can move on to the final step of your activity report, which is to change the status to submit it to us for review and approval. You do that by scrolling down on your toolbar to status options, clicking on activity report submitted. It'll pull up this, are you sure? Because once again, we still want to make sure that you really want to be done with this, which I promise you, you will want to be done with it at some point. And you'll click the OK button and it'll submit it to us. That's the activity report. I know it sounds like a lot. I promise you it will be initially, but at some point it will become a bit of second nature. It won't be as much work as you think, and it will end up being um, kind of just part of the process. And that's kind of the deal that for this is that we have to gather this information in order to be able to track performance and um, ultimately the database collects it in a way that allows for us to ensure that we're not missing any data, and that at any time we can provide details to our administration or to the governor's office on how effective these programs are on a minute to minute basis. We don't have to wait for any data for any reason. So um, the next step will be to then start your expenditure report. The reason I say do your activity report first and then submit your expenditure report is if you submit your expenditure report to us, we will not review it until we've received your activity report and approved it. The reasoning for that is we don't want to pay for services that we haven't reviewed and have knowledge of what actually was received by your participants. So um, do your activity reports first, then do your expenditure reports. If for some reason something comes up and there's an error in the activity reports and we're working through getting them fixed, Edna, I know you're used to that. You can submit your expenditure reports and notify us that you're doing it because you're waiting on something to get fixed. We won't hold them up if it's something on our side. I promise you, we're not evil. We are trying to do our best to assist you to get things accomplished, and we understand that reimbursement is a big piece in that. So we won't hold you up. If you get your reports to us, we will definitely get them reviewed as fast as we can and get them reviewed and approved as fast as we can. Just know if we find errors on any of these documents, we will send them back to you and ask you to make edits, but we'll tell you what needs to be edited and we'll assist you in any way that we can in order to make sure those edits can get accomplished in a quick time frame. So now it's the same process for starting your expenditure reports. Once again, on your My Documents, on your dashboard, you can click Initiate Related Document, or you can be within your application. Right now, we're within the application. You click on Initiate Related Document. You'll click on the drop down for available documents and choose Gains Expenditure Report, and then the month and year in which you're completing that report for. Okay, so your first expenditure report will be for February 2024. You'll start that when, right? March of 2024. So if it's March 1st, you know you're starting your February report. If it's April 1st, you know you're starting your March report. You'll click create, and that will automatically create your expenditure report once you agree again. Sorry, I hate that agree thing. Once again, as I said to you with the activity report, it'll automatically bring you into your expenditure report, but if you decided you don't want to complete it right now, it'll be in your My Tasks, the same way I showed you and I explained to you with the activity report. Once you're ready to start completing it, you'll be in the the expenditure report, and you'll see these forms listed underneath the expenditure report heading. You'll click on Gains Expenditure Report, and that'll bring you to this page. This doesn't look like what yours will look like, but yours will look similar in that it will provide the details that are on your cost summary, the cost summary that you submitted and we approved. That's your full budget. Um, and it will provide all the details of what's on your Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C, and Schedule D. You'll see in the grant requested section, it'll be a breakdown of how you requested those funds. And then under current expenses, you'll enter in the boxes that are there for you to type in how much you're asking for reimbursement for those line items for that month. If this is not your first month, in the amount expended to date columns, that will show what you've previously requested from us. And then you'll have your available balance, which will be your grant requested minus your amount expended to date minus your current expenses, and your available balance has to be a positive number or zero. Cannot be below zero. If it's a negative number, you know you did something wrong and you need to fix it. Okay, so always pay attention to those things. We do check and balance all this stuff, so if you miss it, we'll catch it, I promise. But just so you know, that's how this page works. Once you've entered all of your current month's expenses, you save the page and you can change the status, and then you can move to the next step. If you have no expenditures for the month, but you still need to submit a monthly expenditure report. So if you have no expenditures to report, you check the box at the top, click here if there are no expenditures, save the page, and then you can move on to the next step. The next page is a miscellaneous attachments page. This is also where you can upload your payroll records for the documents. We usually want it in the activity report because that's where we're kind of checking it, but it never hurts to include it in both places because it's easier for checks and balances purposes. But we usually check and balance it on the activity report and then come into the expenditure report, as I said before. So this is where you would include that information and any other additional information that you felt was necessary for us to have. The last thing you need to complete for your monthly expenditures is your payment voucher. This is how our fiscal department knows how much money you're requesting. This is basically their check. So the top part will autofill with the amount of money that you requested on your expenditure report. You're going to check the box by under payee declaration, say, and once you verify the amounts in the top boxes are equal to what you had on your expenditure report, and then you save the page, and that's really all you need to do on this section. Once you've done that, you can move on to the next step. The next step is to scroll down the status options in your toolbar again and click on expenditure report submitted, review required. We'll review it and then we'll approve it and move it forward. Once you click on that status option, it will bring up that, are you sure you want to submit your report? You'll click OK because I know you want to be paid by this point because you just spent a lot of time doing all these reports and it'll get submitted to us for review. So I know this sounds funny to say, and that's all you got to do. But at the end of the day, this is the monthly procedure. They are due by the 15th of the month. We usually send out reminder emails somewhere within a few days of the 15th to say, hey, just a reminder, your report's due by the 15th. If for some reason you're running into an issue, let's say there's an issue with your rapid system and you're trying to get something worked out with USDOL, or you got sick and you were out for a few days and you're behind, let us know. We'll work with you to the best of our abilities on getting those reports in and give you a little additional time if we're capable. We're not um, here to make your lives harder. If there's ever a time that we can assist and make things easier for you, please feel free to always reach out to us and ask any questions. Like I said, I'll provide you with these user guides so that you can use them at any time. But other than that, I'd like to check the chat and answer those questions first, and then I'll open it up. And if anybody wants to ask any additional questions, you guys can feel free to do so. So, all right. Question, Kwame, do all apprentices need to start within 6 months or just the first class? Just the first class has to start within the first 6 months. Um, I would suggest that you get them all started within that first 12 to 14 months because that would give you some time to actually provide details on what you provided to them in the 18-month grant program, because if you're using OJT, you have to spend that OJT within the 18 months. But technically, the requirement is that you've started your first apprentices within the first 6 months. Are we able to provide a payroll report instead of individual pay stubs? Al, I'm going to let you answer this because you're reviewing it. What is your feeling on that?
Yeah, you can do a payroll report, but you also need to submit like on your letterhead, a letter explain or stating basically that the payroll report is to the best of your knowledge correct. And you would have to do that letter with every report because each monthly activity report for the OJT is basically a separate file on its own. So just because you uploaded it 3 months ago, I wouldn't see that unless I went digging for it. So yes, you can do a payroll report, but make sure it's accompanied with a statement on letterhead.
And also, Sherry, a good idea is always to make sure you have those pay stubs on file because we can ask for them at any time. We probably wouldn't ask for all of them, but we might ask for a few for checks and balances at any time just to verify. We sometimes do what we call desk audits, which is basically just verifying things are on track. Uh, we like to make sure that we stay on top of these things in case our internal audit was ever to come out to you guys, you wouldn't have any issues because we've already been trying to help you stay on top of those things. So that's definitely important and would be a good idea for you guys. Is it possible to receive an extension to submit expenditure and activity reports until the 20th of each month? Our close isn't usually completed on the 15th. So Amy, yes, that's what I was just saying at the end here. So I know I waited till the very end to say it, and you asked your question 30 minutes ago. But yes, you can ask for the extension. Um, and I would imagine Al would have no issues with you getting it in, within those 5 days between the 15th and the 20th, as long as you're consistent with it and you're responsive to him if he has any questions. Um, we will read through and answer all questions. All right. And that's Al. Al doesn't have any questions, I'm hoping. Okay, so that's all the chat questions. Does anybody have any additional questions they'd like to unmute and ask? Some people don't like to talk out loud, so please feel free to enter them into the chat. I feel I'm perfectly fine with that as well.
Yeah, Bill.
Yes.
I don't know. The system said that I threw you out of the chat at a certain point, which I did not, but there are more questions in the chat. So I'll read them and you can elaborate on them.
See this? Yeah, I approve his payroll. You know that, right? Al? Um,
Okay. The first one is, what is the new note tab for, like on the IGX pages?
mhm. When you want, if you'd like to put a note on the page, you can. Here's the funny thing about IGX compared to the old Sage database. When you enter a note on a page, it doesn't actually leave the note on the page in IGX. In the old database, it left it right on the page. You can go to the notes section and it would be right there on the page. When you click on new note, it basically just puts a note on the back in the background on the page, and you can go to your notes section under tools in your menu, and you can find the notes that you've entered. I will tell you that a lot of times when you enter a note, we don't see it. So if you want to have us be aware of something, your best bet is to shoot us an email and let us know. We don't necessarily check that note section ourselves. But if you wanted to enter something for yourself as a note, as a reminder for some reason, you could feel free to use that new note section and enter a note, and it would put it in the notes under tools in your left-hand toolbar, and it would be there next month and the following months. It follows your all your documents going forward.
Okay, and next question was, is there a file size limit when uploading miscellaneous attachments?
Mm. So I'm going to say probably, but as far as I know, it is huge and it shouldn't be an issue. Um, if for some reason you do run into an issue, what you can do is just maybe cut it in half and put it in as two. But I've not had anybody run into that problem. Um, so I don't think you'll have any issues.
And then the last question in the chat is, I created a login through jobsourcenj.gov and was not given an AOSOS ID number. When you say proof of an account, where do I find that number once I'm logged in?
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to provide us with the AOSOS ID numbers. We do ask for it in some places on some of the participant lists, but we don't get that for Gains. Gains, we track everything in Gains through their apprentice ID number. So you don't need that AOSOS ID number for anything specific. You can get it through your one stop. So if you were to contact your one stop, they would provide you with your AOSOS IDs. Um, but ultimately, we don't directly work with the one stop system. We just want to make sure that the participants are registered with the one stop system in case there's services that could be made available to them.
And then we have a from Christopher, that I have a
Hey there.
question. So go for it.
Hey, thanks so much. I figured I'd just say it rather than type it. Sorry, my actually camera got hijacked, so I would be seen right now. But question I
We don't
have.
have any. We don't have any programs that are done by the local police departments, Chris. So I can't get you any help on that one yet. But maybe we could try that next time.
It's like, oh yeah, my computer's been funky. But anyway, question I have regarding IGX is there going to be any ability in IGX to run reports? It's you can go in and look at the different activity and expense reports, but to run specific kind of query for pulling out information regarding different partners and such, in terms of totals and budget utilized and different OJT spent. Do you know if there's anything in the works about developing some of the reporting features in IGX?
Not yet, and that's mainly because we just haven't had the time to sit down and kind of create it. Um, the system is everything's there, the data's all there. It's really it comes down to like what we have the time to go in and actually have them create. So I would say, you know, if you have a specific interest in a report, if you could put it in writing and send it to us, that helps us to start the process, and then we can
That's
work with
helpful.
our vendor to ensure that it gets created and possibly even pull you in to help us with testing it to see if it's working properly the way you want it to work. um, because I think that's a good idea, and I think that it would be wonderful for the database to be able to pull reports from more than just us, because we have some reports that we use for ourselves, but they're mostly for data collection and for aggregating things. We have a participant data report that Al uses and Lauren uses to basically check and balance your reports against things, so they don't have to go into all, in Edna's case, 600 of your placement pages. He can look at one report and get all that data off of that one report. So we do have some reports that we utilize, but they're not necessarily specifically shared with you guys. I'm not saying that I'd be against sharing them with you guys necessarily. Maybe we can, once you tell me exactly what it is you're looking for, Chris, and what you would like to have the ability to do, um, then I can, see whether or not the reports that we're utilizing right now would do some of that for you. Because they are exportable to Excel, and sometimes it's easier to just have a report that you can export, and then you can pull whatever you need from it. Um,
Okay.
but that's definitely doable, and I'm not against it. I'm totally on board. I just um, would want to make sure that if we were going to create something, it was actually going to accomplish what you were trying to accomplish. And
Sure.
without knowing exactly what that is, I wouldn't want to create something that doesn't accomplish your stuff. And I would also like to make sure that I can, come up with strategies to make that report be useful in multiple ways, not just in the ways that you would benefit, but maybe other grantees would benefit.
Sure. That's great. Thank you. Appreciate
Hmm.
that.
We have another hand raised. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Just says meeting guest, so I don't know who you are.
Oh, sorry. Hi, this is Bonnie Delon with the Trio New College Network.
How you doing, Bonnie?
Good. How are you? Thanks for this information. I was just wondering, as an intermediary, how does the on-the-job wage reimbursement work for employer partners? Like, when we put in the information in the report, does the reimbursement payment go directly to the employer? Does it flow
No,
through the intermediary?
it flows through the intermediary.
Okay,
Yeah, so they would tell you what they're billing for, and we would pay you, and then you would reimburse them.
great. Okay, thank you.
Hmm. No problem. Very good question, though. A lot of people don't think about that until it's too late. Well, not too late, but until it's never too late. They can get their money, but until they've actually started reporting. Any other questions? Sorry, it's getting to that time where our cleaning crews come around and make it impossible to hear. So hopefully that doesn't get to us before we end this, because I can hear them already. Any other questions? All right, so with that, I'm going to give you guys back 13 minutes of your lives. Sorry I couldn't make it a full 30. I can get long-winded, and even to where I start choking on my own voice, as you guys all got to see. But at the end of the day, we'll get you these user guides. We'll get you a recording of this video. And we'll also get out to all of you the instructions for the contract sign off as soon as I get those things fixed. What I'm going to ask of you is that you don't actually start any of your activity or expenditure reports until we get those contracts signed off on. Main reasoning is it just helps us to stay organized. You know what I mean? So once you've signed off on the contracts, you can start your reports. You don't have to wait for us to get it signed off on by our administration, because that could take weeks, and I don't want you guys holding up. I don't want to hold you guys up any longer than I'm already holding you guys up because the system has an issue. But to me, it's just easiest to stay organized. We'll get you the information so that you have it to digest, but then you can start your reports once you get your contract signed off on. The process is very simple for contract sign off. We have a user guide for that as well. We'll send it to you. A lot of you have already met with and shown some of the stuff, and many of you have done it many times in the past, so it's not that different. At the end of the day, though, if you have any questions or you need anything from us, please know you could always reach out to us at USDOL. I'm sorry, not USDOL, at apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov. That is our, you know what, let me go back. To my other PowerPoint, because that, oh, this is why you don't put hyperlinks in your PowerPoints, because then you click on them. These are the contact information for all of us here within the Office of Apprenticeship. James Manning, as I said, is our assistant director, myself, and the bottom email, apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov, is our generic email address that comes to all of us at once. I promise you, it's not an email address that is not checked. It comes to me, Lauren, Tammy, and Al all at the same time, and we'll respond to it, whoever gets to it first. So we try to get back to you even faster than we would normally if you emailed just one person. So that's the contact information for all of us. Other than that, I will thank you all for taking the time to be here with us. Once again, congratulations on your receipt of the grant. We look forward to this time working with you guys again, and we'll be in touch again here shortly. Okay? All right, take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, how you stop the recording?
Doing it now.